Go to Vienna, the ambassador said, standing 3 steps from my father's grave. Ask for the Kraus office. Give them your father's name. They will know what to do. I remember the cold more than the words. It pressed against my face like something deliberate, something that had arrived just for this. Fort Rosecrans sat on a bluff above the Pacific, and the ocean wind came up hard through the headstones, pulling at the hem of my coat. There were 6 people at the service. A chaplain who had never met my father, 2 men in civilian clothes who stood far enough back that I couldn't see their faces, a woman from the funeral home, and me. My older brother, Nathan, hadn't come. He said the flight from Raleigh was too expensive on short notice. That was the word he used. Expensive. My father was a retired Green Beret. No plaques in the hallway, no framed citations, no bumper sticker on his truck. He lived in a quiet house outside Fayetteville, North Carolina, with a garden he tended every morning and a dog named Bishop that followed him from room to room. He made his own bread. He read history books in a recliner that had lost its springs years ago. He never once talked about what he did overseas. Growing up, I thought he was ordinary. Other kids had fathers who coached baseball or told loud stories at cookouts. Mine replaced the kitchen faucet on a Saturday, fed the dog, and went to bed at 9. He worked part-time at a hardware store after he retired. Said he liked helping people find the right bolt for the job. He died on a Tuesday. Heart failure. The paramedics said it was fast. Bishop was lying beside him when the neighbor broke in through the back door after 2 days of silence. I got the call at my office in San Diego. I was reviewing a shipping manifest when the Fayetteville area code appeared on my screen. I answered, and a woman from the county medical examiner's office spoke carefully, the way people do when they know the next sentence will rearrange your life. He had no savings that I knew of. No investments, no rental property, no life insurance beyond the basic federal policy. His will was handwritten on 2 pages, filed with a local attorney named Greer. The house and the dog went to me. Everything else, which appeared to be very little, was left unspecified. Nathan called the same evening. "So that's it?" he said. "The house and the dog?" I didn't answer right away. I was still trying to remember the last thing my father had said to me. Something about the tomatoes not doing well this year. "I don't know yet," I said. "There's nothing to know," Nathan replied. "He lived like a monk. You know that." There was something sharp in his voice. Not grief. Inventory. At the burial, the chaplain read a passage I didn't hear. The rifle volley cracked 3 times across the Pacific. I accepted the folded flag and pressed it against my chest. Then I turned to leave. That's when I saw the man walking toward me. He was tall, maybe 70, wearing a dark overcoat and no hat. He moved with the kind of ease that comes from decades of entering rooms where people stand when you arrive. He didn't introduce himself with a title. I only learned later that he had served as the United States ambassador to Austria for 6 years. He stopped a few feet away and extended his hand. "I knew your father," he said, "for a very long time." That surprised me. My father never mentioned knowing anyone who carried that kind of weight. The ambassador glanced at the headstone, then back at me. "Go to Vienna," he said. "Ask for the Kraus office. Give them your father's name. They will know what to do." He handed me a small envelope. Inside was a single card with a phone number and a name written in neat black ink. No logo, no title. Before I could form a question, he nodded once and walked toward a black car parked along the cemetery road. The door opened. He got in. The car pulled away without sound. I stood there holding the envelope while the wind bent the small flags beside the graves. I didn't tell Nathan. That night, I flew back to Fayetteville and let myself into my father's house. Bishop greeted me at the door with his tail low, confused. The house smelled like pine cleaner and old wool. His boots were by the back door, laces still tied. His coffee mug sat upside down on the drying rack, the way he always left it. "Nothing about this house," suggested Vienna. I opened drawers I had never opened before. Tax returns going back 15 years. Receipts from the hardware store. A folder of veterinary records for Bishop. Everything ordinary, everything small. But in the bedroom closet, behind a stack of wool blankets, I found a lockbox. It wasn't hidden exactly. It was placed where someone who wasn't looking wouldn't notice. Inside were 3 passports, 2 expired, 1 current. The pages were filled with stamps. Austria, Germany, Switzerland, the Czech Republic, dates spanning almost 2 decades. Trips I never knew about. I sat on the edge of his bed and held the passports like they belonged to someone I hadn't met. Nathan texted that night. Any update on the house? I can drive down this weekend to look at it. I didn't respond. The next morning, I called the number on the card. A man answered in precise, accented English. I gave my father's name. There was a pause that lasted long enough for me to hear my own heartbeat. Yes, he said. We have been expecting this call. He didn't say expecting you. He said expecting this call, as if the event had been scheduled long before my father's heart stopped. He asked when I could travel. I told him I needed a week. He said that was fine. He asked me to bring identification and a certified copy of the death certificate. No mention of money, no mention of accounts, just procedure. After I hung up, I walked through the house again. I noticed things I had missed. A filing cabinet in the garage with a combination lock. A small safe bolted to the floor of the hall closet. A notebook on his desk with columns of numbers and dates. No names, just initials and amounts. My father had not lived carelessly. He had lived carefully. There was a difference I was only beginning to understand. Nathan called that afternoon. You selling the house or what? It's been 4 days, I said. I'm just saying, if there's anything to divide, let's not drag it out. There's nothing to divide yet. Yet, he repeated. So there might be something. I told him I was meeting with Dad's attorney. That was enough to keep him quiet. Nathan and I had never been close in the way siblings are supposed to be. He was 5 years older. He left home at 18, bounced between jobs, opened a landscaping business that folded, then a bar that lasted 11 months. Dad helped him more than once, quietly, without conditions. Nathan took the money each time like it was owed. I stayed. I visited Dad every other weekend. I brought groceries. I listened to him talk about the garden and the weather and nothing at all. He never mentioned Vienna. I booked the flight on a Wednesday night. Bishop watched me pack from the doorway. I'll be back, I told him. He didn't believe me. Dogs never do. The flight was long. I had time to think about the years after Mom died. Nathan pulled away first, stopped visiting, stopped calling unless he needed something. Dad never complained about it. He just kept making bread and feeding the dog and reading his history books alone. Vienna didn't feel like a movie. It felt like a city that had been important for a long time and didn't need to remind you. The cab from the airport passed stone buildings and tram lines. The sky was white and flat. The Kraus office was on a quiet street near the Ringstrasse. No sign on the door, just a brass number plate. Inside, the floors were dark wood, and the air smelled like old paper and coffee. A woman at the front desk took my name and made a call. Within minutes, a man in a gray suit appeared. Miss Caldwell? Yes. Please come with me. We walked down a hallway lined with closed doors. He led me into a private office with tall windows overlooking a courtyard. I am very sorry about your father, he said. He was a remarkable man. Everyone kept saying that. Remarkable. I had thought of him as quiet. He opened a leather folder. Inside were documents with my father's signature, dated over 2 decades. Your father established a trust here in 2003, he explained. It has been maintained with regular contributions and disciplined investment. I looked at the numbers. They didn't make sense. Not because they were complicated, but because they were large. This can't be right, I said. It is correct. How much? The trust is currently valued at approximately $9.4 million. The number sat in the room like a third person. My father clipped coupons. He drove a truck with 200,000 miles on it. He bought his shirts at the thrift store on Route 87. What was it for? I asked. The man folded his hands. Your father designated the trust to support families of fallen service members and certain former operatives who experienced long-term medical consequences from their duties. I leaned back slowly. He never said a word. He would not have, the man said. Discretion was fundamental to him. He slid another document toward me. You are named as the successor trustee. Upon his passing, full oversight transfers to you. Me? Yes. Why not? I stopped myself. I was about to say Nathan. There was also a letter, handwritten, sealed in a plain envelope with my name on the front in my father's block letters, to be opened only after his death. My phone buzzed. Nathan. I let it ring twice before answering. What did the lawyer say? He asked immediately. I'm still going through paperwork. Is there anything? I looked at the number again. 9.4 million. There's something, I said carefully. Silence. How much? I didn't answer, because in that moment I understood something my father must have known for years. The question wasn't how much. The question was what for. I need more time, I said. Don't shut me out, Nathan warned. I hung up and opened the letter. The paper was thick. His handwriting hadn't changed since I was a girl. Straight lines, no decoration. If you're reading this, then I ran out of time to say it in person. My throat tightened. I didn't keep this from you because I didn't trust you. I kept it because money rearranges the way people think. Once someone knows it exists, every conversation becomes about it. He explained that after he retired, he stayed connected to a small network of men he had served with, not through reunions or social events, through quiet calls. Over the years, some of those men suffered, injuries that never fully healed, cancers tied to things they were told were safe, families that broke under the weight of what their fathers and husbands carried home. He didn't start a foundation. He didn't hold galas. He opened a trust in a quiet office in Vienna, and he fed it, month after month, year after year. You don't announce help, he wrote. You just show up. I folded the letter and placed it back in the envelope. The man returned with a second folder. Inside were anonymized summaries of families who had received support. A daughter in Ohio whose college tuition was paid after her father's suicide. A widow in Georgia whose mortgage was brought current 3 months before foreclosure. A former medic in Montana who received specialized neurological treatment that the VA had denied. 17 families. Over 20 years. All of it invisible. Your father lived below his means deliberately, the man said. He invested conservatively and consistently. He declined every opportunity to withdraw for personal use. I sat with that for a long time. That evening, in my hotel room overlooking the Danube, I called Nathan back. Dad created a trust, I said. A trust? For what? For veterans and their families. Quiet. And us? He asked. I'm the trustee. That's not what I'm asking. 9.4 million, I said. He exhaled like something had been punched out of him. 9, he stopped. And he let me borrow money like I was a charity case? He helped you because he wanted to. That's different from $9 million sitting in Europe. It is different, I agreed. That's the point. I'm calling a lawyer, he said. I expected that. After we hung up, I reread my father's letter. Money doesn't just test greed. It tests patience. It tests what people are willing to protect when protecting it costs them something. He had known this moment would come. He had planned for it the way he planned for everything. Quietly, thoroughly, without announcement. I flew back to North Carolina, carrying documents that weighed more than paper. Nathan was already at the house when I arrived. He was sitting at the kitchen table with a yellow legal pad, the same table where Dad used to read the newspaper every morning with Bishop lying across his feet. We need to talk about this, Nathan said. We do. I placed the folder on the table. I didn't hand it to him. I walked him through it the way it had been walked through for me. It's a trust, I said. Established in 2003. It supports specific families, medical care, housing, education. That's charity, Nathan said. That's what he chose to build. And you control it. Yes. And I get what? I looked at him carefully. You were not named as a beneficiary. The word landed between us like a stone dropped into still water. He cut me out, Nathan said quietly. He made a decision. Because I wasn't good enough. Because he already gave you what he could, directly. Nathan stood up and walked to the window. Bishop watched him from the corner. You know how much I owe? He said without turning around. My credit cards, the business loan, the second mortgage on the townhouse. I know. And he had 9 million sitting in Austria. He had a purpose sitting in Austria. The money was how he funded it. Nathan turned. His eyes were hard. You're going to sit there and lecture me about purpose while I'm drowning. I'm not lecturing. Then what are you doing? I'm telling you what he built. He built something for strangers, Nathan snapped. While his own son couldn't make rent. He paid your rent 3 times, I said quietly. That landed harder than I intended. Nathan stiffened. Easy for you to judge, he said. You always had it together. I didn't always have it together. I just didn't ask him to fix it when I didn't. He grabbed his jacket. You're choosing dead soldiers over your own brother. I'm choosing what Dad intended. He stopped at the door. He always liked you more. No, I said. He trusted me differently. That's not the same thing. Nathan left. He didn't slam the door. He closed it slowly, which was worse. That night I sat at the kitchen table with Bishop at my feet and read the trust documents again. Everything was measured, structured. My father had written this the way he lived, without excess, without drama. Nathan filed within a month. His attorney sent a formal petition to the circuit court in Cumberland County challenging the trust's validity. Undue influence, lack of disclosure, failure to provide equitable distribution to heirs. I hired an attorney in Fayetteville named Grace Whitfield. She was 62, former Army JAG, and she spoke the way my father wrote. Short sentences, clear words. "This is solid," she said after reviewing everything. "Your father knew exactly what he was doing. He expected this, didn't he?" Grace nodded. "Families always test the structure. That's why he built it strong." The first hearing was procedural, a plain courtroom in Fayetteville. Nathan sat at the opposite table. He had lost weight. He didn't look at me. His attorney argued that the Austrian trust had been structured to deliberately circumvent North Carolina inheritance law. Grace responded calmly. "The trust predates any relevant claim by over 20 years. It was legally established, properly maintained, and explicitly referenced in the decedent's will. There is no evidence of undue influence." The judge reviewed the filings and scheduled a follow-up hearing. Outside the courthouse, Nathan spoke to me for the first time in weeks. "You could end this right now," he said. "How?" "Split it. Walk away clean. It's not mine to split. It's $9 million. Nobody's watching." "Dad's watching," I said. He shook his head. "You're turning him into a saint." "No. I'm finally seeing who he was." The second hearing brought documentation from Vienna. Investment records, disbursement logs, beneficiary reports, everything clean and consistent. Grace presented it methodically. The third hearing brought something none of us expected. The ambassador appeared. He walked in without ceremony and sat behind our table until Grace called him as a witness. He testified in the same measured tone he had used at the cemetery. "I knew Sergeant Caldwell for over 30 years, he said. "He was the most principled man I have ever known. The trust was entirely his idea. No one influenced him. If anything, he influenced the rest of us." Nathan's attorney tried to suggest the ambassador had pressured my father. The ambassador didn't raise his voice. "No one pressured Thomas Caldwell into anything. Anyone who knew him would tell you that." Something shifted in the courtroom after that. Not dramatic, just a settling, the way a building settles after a storm passes through. The judge ruled within the hour. The trust was valid. The petition was dismissed. Outside the courthouse, Nathan stood by his truck for a long time. I walked over and stood beside him. "You really weren't going to give in," he said. "No, even when I sued you, especially then." He looked at the ground. "He never believed in me. That's not what this was. Feels like it." I didn't argue, because in some ways, he wasn't wrong. Dad had trusted me with oversight. That didn't mean he loved Nathan less. But trust and love don't always travel in the same direction. "I'm not your enemy," I said. "Sure feels like you are." He drove away. For a week after the ruling, there was silence. No calls, no texts. I continued working with the Vienna office. Disbursements went out on schedule. A daughter in Kentucky started her nursing program. A widow in New Mexico kept her house. A former sergeant in Colorado received treatment for traumatic brain injury that the VA had waitlisted for 2 years. Life moved forward the way it always does. Quietly, if you let it. But something kept pulling me back to one line in Dad's letter. "You don't announce help. You just show up." Nathan wasn't a beneficiary, but he was still my brother. I drove to Raleigh on a Saturday morning. His townhouse looked tired, paint peeling near the gutters. A stack of newspapers on the porch that no one had brought inside. He opened the door like he had been expecting me. "I figured you'd come," he said. "Can I come in?" He stepped aside. The place smelled like burnt coffee and dust. Bills were spread across the kitchen counter. I didn't comment on them. We sat at his small table. "I'm not here to argue," I said. "Then why are you here?" "Because this was never about winning." He gave me a skeptical look. "Could have fooled me. I'm not dissolving the trust. That part is settled. But Dad built a provision into the structure. A family stabilization clause. Controlled, documented, conditional. Nathan frowned. What does that mean? It means I can allocate funds for you annually. Debt restructuring, financial counseling, a capped distribution tied to accountability. You want to babysit my finances. I want to stop the cycle. I'm not a child. No, I said. You're my brother. And you're in trouble. The room went quiet. Bishop would have liked this room, I thought. He always liked quiet rooms. I looked at Dad's records, I continued. He paid off your credit cards twice, covered your business loan, helped with the down payment on this place. Nathan looked away. He never made me feel bad about it. I'm not trying to either. Then why the conditions? Because he believed in structure. So do I. Nathan stared at the table for a long time. I wanted him to be proud of me, he said. His voice was low, almost a whisper. I know. He never said it. He didn't say it to me either, I said. He showed it. In different ways. Nathan's eyes were wet, though he didn't cry. You got the trust, he said. That says enough. No, I said gently. It says he trusted me to protect it. That's not the same as being loved more. We sat there for a while. Outside, a car passed slowly on the street. I'm offering you this, I said. Structured debt repayment. A financial advisor paid through the trust. A capped annual distribution tied to progress. No lump sum, no blank check. And if I say no, then nothing changes. He nodded slowly. You'd really walk away. I already did. In court. That wasn't personal? It was the hardest thing I've ever done. He leaned forward, elbows on the table. I don't want to be the guy who sued his sister over money. Then don't be. He gave a tired laugh. You sound just like him. I learned from him. We spent the next 2 hours going through his debts. Credit cards, the second mortgage, the failed business loan still accruing interest. It wasn't glamorous. It was spreadsheets and honesty. When I stood to leave, Nathan walked me to the door. You really went to Vienna? He said. Yes. And he really built all that? Yes. He shook his head slowly. I thought he had nothing. He had everything. He just didn't put it on the wall. Neither of us said more. I drove back to Fayetteville with the windows down, the Carolina air warm and familiar. 14 months after the court dismissed Nathan's petition, we stood together at Fort Rosecrans. Not because anyone required it. Not because the trust demanded it. Because it felt right. The headstone looked the same as it had the day the ambassador told me to fly to Vienna. Clean, simple. Name, rank, dates. No extra inscription. Dad would have hated extra inscription. Nathan had changed. Not dramatically, not overnight, but in the way foundations shift when you finally stop ignoring the cracks. He had completed his financial counseling, paid off 2 of the 3 credit cards, sold the boat he never used, closed the credit line he used to treat like a safety net. He hadn't become perfect. He had become steady. The trust continued exactly as Dad designed it. Medical payments went out quarterly. 3 children of former teammates received tuition support that fall. A widow in Tennessee kept her home because someone, invisibly, quietly, brought her mortgage current. No press releases, no galas, no plaques. Just steady. Nathan looked at the headstone. I used to think he was holding out on us, he said. He was holding something, I replied. Just not what we expected. He nodded. Do you ever wish you'd just split it? No. He looked at me. Even when I sued you? Especially then. That earned a small, tired smile. We stood there a while longer. The Pacific wind moved through the headstones the same way it had on the day of the funeral. Some things don't change. They don't need to. Before we left, Nathan cleared his throat. I was wrong, he said. About him. About you. I know, I answered. He didn't say more. He didn't need to. On the drive back to the airport, I thought about the first time I opened Dad's letter in that quiet office in Vienna. Money rearranges the way people think. He was right. For a while, Nathan only heard numbers. So did I, if I'm honest. 9.4 million can make your hands shake. But over time, the number faded. What remained was structure, responsibility, purpose. Dad hadn't left me wealth to enjoy. He had left me a standard to maintain. There were nights over the past year when I felt overwhelmed. The paperwork, the oversight, the careful decisions about who qualified and how much to release. Every time I felt tempted to simplify, to sell, to reduce, to turn it into something easier, I thought about the way he lived. No plaques in the hallway, no framed citations, no bumper sticker on his truck, just steady. Nathan meets with his advisor every month now. He sends me updates on his own, not because I ask, because he chooses to. We still disagree sometimes. We still carry history. But we no longer carry resentment at the center of every conversation. The trust will continue long after I'm gone. It's structured that way. The Vienna office has succession protocols, legal safeguards, layers of review. Dad thought in decades, not in months. I didn't understand that when I was younger. I used to think visible success was the only kind that mattered. Bigger titles, louder achievements, public recognition. Now I see it differently. Steady wins. If you've ever sat at a kitchen table after a funeral and wondered what someone really left behind, you know what I mean? It's rarely just money. It's patterns. It's discipline. It's the example you choose to follow or reject. My father was a retired Green Beret. No plaques in the hallway, no framed citations. He lived quiet, died the same way. But he didn't leave quietly. He left instructions, and he trusted me to follow them. If this story made you think about someone in your own life, someone who lived steady instead of loud, take a moment today to honor that. Call them if you can. Forgive them if you need to. Learn from them while there's still time. And if you believe that strength doesn't have to shout to matter, I hope you'll stay with this channel. Share your thoughts below. Tell me what steady has meant in your life, because sometimes the greatest legacy isn't what you inherit, it's what you choose to protect.